All right, good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are in the world and when you're watching and listening to this. But we are the fine folks at StreetSense, and we're here to present our third webinar for LISC on behalf of Uber Eats and Visa, who have been helping us develop toolkits and webinars for restaurants, bars, and really working with this team of grant recipients to really optimize their restaurant performance. And in this webinar, leveraging online marketing tools to help build your business. So joining me today is Gina Veneziano, who's going to be walking us through some restaurant marketing tips, some ideas around creating compelling content, as well as some ideas on how to activate insights and analytics on some of the social media platforms that allow you to measure your performance for online marketing to see who you're reaching, how impactful what you're doing is, and how it's working to build your business, to give you some real-time feedback, much like our customers do inside the restaurant on our social media and online platforms. So as I mentioned, Gina is our lead creative strategist here at Eat and Drink. We're a creative company called StreetSense, but my team is the Eat and Drink team, and we're a team of former operators, owners, restaurant and bar, and hoteliers. And we advise on large clients around the globe on what to do inside their restaurants, how to concept them, how to create compelling restaurant and bar experiences, as well as working with our other studios here at StreetSense in interior architecture, design, branding, and in this case, marketing, where we've pulled in a lot of ideas to bring to the fore, to be able to think about how to really be professional about our online marketing, but in a way that's not intimidating or too difficult for independent restaurateurs to really be able to activate. So I'm going to turn things over to Gina to walk us through some key points. I also want to note up front that all of this material is coming from a toolkit that we developed together with LISC, Uber Eats, and Visa, and all of their inputs, including lots and lots of information about how to activate any and all of these strategies, example case studies, imagery, hyperlinks to more tutorials, if anything captures your eye or interest. And we'll be doing a subsequent webinar later next month, explaining how to use that toolkit, the content that's found within it, and how to really have it be an evergreen resource for all the grant recipients, as well as for other LISC and Uber and Visa constituents who are going to be joining us on a larger webinar. So thanks for joining, and we'll be working through the marketing content with you here, and looking forward to chiming in, but Gina's leading the way, and I'll turn it over to her.
Thanks, Alex. Hello, I'm Gina, as Alex mentioned. I am part of the Eat and Drink team now, but prior to this, I spent several years specifically doing marketing for independent restaurants. So I'm especially excited about this presentation today. Also, as Alex mentioned, this is taken from a much larger toolkit. In the toolkit, we really go into quite a few marketing tactics, but today's webinar is really focused, because marketing can be so broad, really focused on not only social media, but specifically Instagram as your social media platform. Regardless which social media you feel most comfortable using, a lot of these ideas can be applied to any platform. We particularly like Instagram because it's very visual, and as we know, people eat with their eyes. So it's a great opportunity to share pictures of your food and beverage. But like I said, anything that we mentioned, you can certainly apply to other platforms. And I do encourage everyone to go to the website. A lot of times, a lot of the things I mentioned, there will be links from the toolkit to other websites, and from the toolkit, there are other documents that we've created. So it's quite a large wealth of knowledge, marketing related. But I will get into really the heart of any type of marketing, which is we want to communicate effectively with our guests. And one of the best ways to do that is by creating compelling content. Anytime you post anything on any social media platform, you want that post to either be engaging, educational, or exciting. And ideally, it could be all three at the same time. So before you do post anything, that's kind of what you're going to use as your baseline. Is this engaging? Is there a conversation that I could have with my guests? Is this educational? Am I showing them something that they might not know? Or am I drumming up some excitement for something that might be coming up in the business? You will always want to have a variety of types of posts, whether that be commerce related. So things like specials, promotions you may be running, perhaps deals that are offered only to your social media guests. Um, your post could be community engagement related. So these are asking questions, responding to comments, tagging other friends of your business. So maybe that's your neighboring businesses, maybe that's some of your vendors. The more people that you can tag and engage, the more it's going to virally grow and reach more people. And then there's also a type of post which we'll call informational posts. So those are recipes, um, facts, so stating that you might be all organic or you use all local ingredients, whatever it might be that you want people to know about your business. Generally, you want a mix of all these types of posts. So sometimes you don't want to be always throwing specials up on there. So you don't always want to be informational. You really want a variety of these types of posts. A word you'll hear me use throughout the presentation is evergreen. So that means certain posts can be posted any day or time, any month. That's kind of like your skeleton. You're going to put those in when there's not much else to put in. Those are your recipes. Those are your employee highlights, things like that. It doesn't matter what day it is that you're posting. Then you're going to fill that in with things that are more topical and more time related. Again, those specials, those promotions, things like that. Regardless of the type of post that you're posting, you will want to use a caption. Of course, especially Instagram, as I mentioned, very visual, and a picture can tell 1,000 words, but you do want your captions to be also be useful. So be short, be direct. If it is, you're closing early today for a private party, put that as your headline in your caption. That's what people need to know. They don't need to be scrolling all the way down to find that in a long paragraph. Lead with that most important information. And then once you have created your general caption, you do want to use some hashtags. So the social media powers that be did some research and somehow found that 9 hashtags are the magic number. So I look at hashtags when I'm doing these for individual businesses kind of as threefold. So I would put 2 or 3 hashtags that are very generic. So if you are Joe's Italian Beef, you're going to put 2 or 3 of your hashtags always as hashtag Italian Beef, hashtag Chicago's best Italian beef. Then you can use 2 or 3 hashtags that are a little bit more cheeky, a little bit more fun. So maybe you put hot or sweet in relation to the peppers, or you put dipped or dry in relation to the au jus sauce. So you've got, now we're talking about 6 hashtags. Your final 3 I use to categorize posts for myself. So the generic ones are going to be how people are going to find you. Someone might be searching on Instagram, Chicago's best Italian beef. And that's how they're going to find you because you already hashtagged Chicago's best Italian beef. The third fold that you're going to use is more to categorize for yourself. So if you are offering 2 for Tuesdays on fries, you're going to make sure on that post that you always put 2 for Tuesdays. That way, when you're going back to look at all of your previous 2 for Tuesday posts, you can click on that hashtag and all of those posts will come up and it will weed out all of your other posts that don't have that hashtag. I just wanted to mention that because I think there's a lot of confusion around hashtags and they really can be used as a very helpful tool. And then finally, you want to always think about your visuals that you are posting. As mentioned, we have written several documents, and one of them is a whole guide to taking pictures on your iPhone that are social media appropriate. So go to our toolkit and you can find the link there, but it does talk about your composition basics. So talking about angles and backgrounds, making sure that everything you post is very consistent with your brand colors and materials. By that, I mean, if someone saw 2 or 3 of your posts without seeing your name, would they know that it was coming from your restaurant? You want to kind of start to develop a brand or an aesthetic. And we'll talk a little bit more about branding in a couple of slides from now. And we also will talk a little bit more about user-generated content. But I wanted to mention that here because it is a win-win for everyone. when someone is at your restaurant and they are tagging you and posting you, assumably they like what you're doing, so they're posting, they want people to know they're there. But for you, it's creating free content. So we'll talk a little bit more about that, but just keep that in the back of your head when you're thinking about, oh, I need to be posting, what can I post? You can use what your followers are posting and repost. At the end of the day, if you are not sure about what to post, just be authentic, be yourself. This will come across a little bit more when we talk about your brand. But I kind of use that as my golden rule when I'm like, what should I post today? What should I post for Joe's Beef? We're going to use that, I guess, as the running example because I'm hungry for a Chicago beef sandwich. If you aren't sure, just always ask yourself, is this accurate? Am I saying the truth here? Is this accessible? Is this something that someone can ask me about and I can talk about? And is this authentic? And if you use those three guidelines, in addition to always posting something that's engaging, educational, and exciting, you'll be just fine.
I'm an outsider, Gina, but I prefer Portillo's, just saying.
I love a Portillo's. I do.
So just two things I wanted to touch on, and my background is from restaurant operations, not restaurant marketing. But there are two things I learned from operations that can really tie into posting for Instagram and thinking about it as a tool of operating the marketing arm of your restaurant. And one is around captions, and Gina mentioned it briefly around a call to action, but I wanted to really define what that means. I'm a firm believer that every single post in every single format and every single social media platform should compel the person reading it to do something. That something doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be anything but obvious, but it should compel them to do something with the information that they're receiving, whether it's engaging, educational, or just exciting. And that call to action can be as simple as click on link in bio to order now. It can be give us a call to get this, come in today to do that. But really closing each and every caption you ever write on any platform with a direct call to action so that the guest knows exactly what you want them to do within this information, whether it's just simply engaging, whether it's educational, or whether it's informing them about something entirely new that you're doing. There should always be a direct call to action in every engagement. And it can be as simple as leave a comment below, something to really foster that community and engagement that really plays so well on social media. And it's something I learned a long time ago from training materials. What's my next step? It's the same thing with training your guests. What do I do next if I want to learn more, do more, see more, eat more, or come in more? So really using that call to action. The second here is on composition, angles, backgrounds, materials, colors, all of those things. They can be quite intimidating, but I think the two mistakes that people make is one, trying to be too polished and professional. I think authenticity oftentimes reads a lot better, and I think we'll talk about that a little bit more as we go throughout. But actually, I prefer when people use iPhones rather than professional photographers because it's easier to keep up with. You can create a really compelling composition with the quality of phones that we have in our pocket, and Google's fine too. But I just want to make sure that people don't get so intimidated and caught up in creating the perfect visual by thinking they need all this extra tech to do so. It's really about composition more so than the professional quality photography. And doing so, you can find interesting spots inside your space that have great lighting, that's an interesting angle of your tabletop. I have many friends who really kind of post about 3 or 4 different angles of their same restaurant over and over and over again that really they think capture the essence of it. Maybe it's got a little plant in the background that you always see coming through. Maybe there's an area of exposed brick that they're always posting in front of. Maybe they always do their overhead shots on a particular table they think, reflects their brand best. Or maybe there's just a spot in the restaurant that has the best natural lighting and it's the most conducive to shooting things. And I think just not being so intimidated by creating these visuals and thinking you need to use professional photographers. I think too, learning from other folks and other folks' Instagrams and really following other restaurants that you aspire to be can help you think about how to present your product in the same way. And again, creating a lower barrier to entry to really think about how to use what's in your pocket rather than having to pay somebody to develop out a strategy that you just can't keep up with, whether it's because of financial reasons, time, quality, or commitment, because it takes a lot to bring somebody in for for a professional photo shoot. And there are opportunities to do that and to create those kind of evergreen assets that can be used on a website, that can be used for particular campaigns. But you should be able to recreate and generate that aesthetic yourself with your own phone, with an authentic picture inside your restaurant. And if you don't know, ask some of your younger staff. They almost always have personal social media accounts that are pretty well polished these days, and sometimes even monetized to make money off of. So you'd be impressed by the knowledge that's already in your four walls to be able to think about how to create compelling visuals without creating complex processes that you just can't keep up with.
Thanks, Alex. Those are all great points. And clearly you're the operations guy, because those were very tactical things that make such a difference. So thank you. Here are some examples of those kind of categories that we talked about. Here you'll see in the Jubilee ice cream, this is a good example of engaging. So obviously they're an ice cream place. Composition wise, having a hand holding something is kind of a nice look. It kind of implies an action and like someone's just about to eat it. So right there, they did a great job with their composition of their photo they posted, but also they're really in touch with what's going on around them. It's election day, and the conversation that everyone around them is having is about voting, not necessarily about ice cream. So the idea here is to become engaged in the community's conversation. I voted, let them know you're part of the community. Also, Instagram will, especially if it's a bigger event like this, if you see down at the bottom of the picture, Instagram automatically added that, like, here's information for voting this today. So it's automatically getting in front of an audience that they may not have gotten in front of had they not engaged in what's going on around them. The third thing they did in this picture is they tagged their partner Uber Eats, and they do a giveaway. So they said, anyone who voted, come in and show you voted or order on via Uber Eats. So also attracting another audience, and you could get a free cookie. So it's an example of several things in one, but it's very topical. It's very what's going on in the moment and being part of the conversation that everyone else is already having. As far as the educational example, Pressed Juicery, this is pretty much what I was referring to as one of those evergreen posts. They give the recipe for one of their juices. The part that makes it a little bit time sensitive is they say, come in for your post-Halloween blues. So they posted this on November 1st. It's commenting on something that everyone participated in the day before in Halloween. So keeping it topical in that matter. But they likely had this picture already taken. They definitely had this recipe already written. To what Alex was talking about as far as composition goes, this is an overhead shot. They probably did several of these at once. So they probably had all of their ingredients laid out on the board, did this picture, then changed it out and put new ingredients on the board and did another picture. And then they have these recipes for whenever they want to use them. Of course, they made it time sensitive because they talked about it being the day after Halloween, and that's certainly something that you can plan around. But then you also have an arsenal of posts if you have a bank of recipes and shots that go along with it that you could educate your guests on. Finally, an exciting post. This is Chipotle. They were coming out with some branded products, and they were kind of giving a countdown, like this is coming soon. To anything that's exciting, it's always an opportunity to ask your followers to engage by tagging their friends. Tag someone who you'd buy this t-shirt for, or in restaurant case, maybe you are bottling a sauce. So countdown to our sauce. This is exciting. Here's a picture of our sauce, and tag someone who you would want to share this sauce with. You could even take it a step further and do some type of contest where you could say, we're going to give free sauce away for a year, tag the person that you would share that with. And then that's also how things grow virally, is the more people are tagging, then they'll tag their friends, and so on and so on. So it does build that excitement, but it also grows your followers. And continuing on with the theme of really just fostering guest interaction. So everything we've talked about is to do that. Remember, we really just are trying to have a effective communication with our guests. But a couple of more things that you can always do to foster these interactions is start a conversation, ask questions, be responsive to the comments. Even if they aren't the most positive comments, I think a response to them in a public forum really says a lot about who you are as a brand. And then you can also have fun. A good example that people use a lot of times is the Wendy's Twitter account. They kind of poke a little fun at Burger King. It's never anything too harsh, but it's kind of funny, and people kind of tune in to see that. So depending on if that's who your brand is, you could certainly have some fun back and forth dialogue, but you always want to be responsive and ask questions to get that conversation going. Things that naturally get conversations going are behind the scenes looks. So I've mentioned recipe development a few times. It might seem mundane to you because you make this recipe every day, but people who have never been in a kitchen, in a commercial kitchen, are very fascinated by it. So showing what's going on, what are you doing to get ready for service? What goes into this, prep work, this recipe? And to that, hand in hand goes with highlighting your employees. It's kind of nice to know who they might be greeted by when they actually do step foot into your store. So having some type of employee spotlight also creates some evergreen content, also makes people feel comfortable that they know who you are when they do visit. And then to Alex's point, your employees tend to know the types of questions that people are asking, and also what's going on social media, some of the younger ones. So they could also be a great resource for you. Like, hey, I don't really know what to post next week. They're the front lines, so they know what questions they get all the time from guests. Ask them what guests they're asking them about, and then you can proactively post that in some of your posts. And then I mentioned we were going to talk more about user generated content. So you really can use this to your advantage. If a person is there at your store and they have tagged you, 9 times out of 10, they want you to repost them. But it is kind of an unspoken courtesy to always ask permission. And it's a opening the door to a conversation. So if someone is at your restaurant and they tag you, I would, as the social media person for the restaurant, I would reach out and say, hey, we're so happy that you visited. Do you mind if we repost this? Like I said, 9 times out of 10, they're going to say, yes, please do. And you repost it and you tag them in it too. Again, it's kind of like a common courtesy amongst social media. Many times you will have more followers than they do. So it's exciting for them. Every now and then you'll get lucky, you'll get someone with a lot of followers, and that's even a better win-win situation for you. But it's always nice to cross tag and also let them know you're going to be doing it. As I've mentioned, contests are always a great idea to not only engage followers, but to generate user generated content. So we would do, and I'll talk more in our activity section about a restaurant I did a lot of social media for, but we would run a campaign where if you spotted our mascot and posted a selfie with him, that you could be entered to win some pretty good prizes. And so you're really having people take the pictures for you and then reposting. So it's kind of a no-brainer there. And then testimonials and reviews are good filler. So if someone writes a great review on Yelp, there's no reason why you can't retype that up and put it onto Instagram or put it onto Facebook in a kind of artful manner. So you kind of are always, again, that's something you can use forever. So type them up, spend a couple hours, type up your best reviews, and then you have them in your back pocket to use as posts when you need something. So mostly I've talked about so far, I've been referring to posts. So posts within Instagram are what you put on your feed, and they live there forever unless you manually take them down. There's also something called quick hit content. And for Instagram, it's through your stories. They live for 24 hours. If you want them to last longer, you can pin them to your highlights, but most stories are quick hit. They're just that. They only live for 24 hours, and when they're gone, they're gone. Because of that, and because of Instagram's algorithm, these are usually viewed by your most loyal followers. So for instance, as a consumer, as a guest, I might follow 2,000 accounts, but I'm not seeing 2,000 stories every day. I'm only seeing the stories who I have liked and commented on in the past. IG's algorithm pushes those up to the beginning, to the front of my story viewing. So knowing that your most loyal followers are the ones seeing your stories, that allows you to create your content a bit differently. You can be a little more cheeky, you can be a little more casual. They know your brand, they want to know more, they want to see the behind the scenes. You can also do specific things just on IG. So you can see this Kong box ran a giveaway on a story. So it only ran for 24 hours and it was a pretty good prize, 5 free Kong boxes. So this was really, they knew this was going to be for their loyal followers. The differences are there is a limit in text on your stories. So you can't quite write as much as you would in a caption of a post. You can use some geotagging, which is pretty cool. So if people click on your geotag, they will be brought to a map to see exactly where you are. This is really helpful in today's day and age when so many people are checking out restaurants on social media before they ever visit the restaurant. So by putting a geotag on there, they can see exactly where you're located because they very well may not have visited you yet before. You can do polls, you can do countdown. There's an asterisk next to swipe up links. That's available. So it's exactly what it sounds like. If a person swipes up, they can be brought directly to any website that you would like them to be. But that's only available for accounts that have 10,000 or more followers. So if you're not there yet, something to aim towards to get there, to get that direct swipe up link, because otherwise they have to go to your profile to get to your website.
Yeah, and one thing here, just to add on to something I was saying before about generating this content, here is really where you can lean into being as low tech as you want to be. The expectation for these is that they're really spur of the moment, and that they're really something that can be generated as quickly as they're posted, to be able to create something quickly, to be reactive, to be very quick on posting something that really there's no expectation for any level of polish. As an example, our firm runs the social media account for Logitech and all of their sub brands, a large multinational corporation with big budgets for their social media and social media production. Yet the way that we produce those posts in-house is with our iPhones and our Androids, because that's the aesthetic that people are used to. And it's another layer of authenticity that started as just people sharing with people. And as companies and restaurants and bars and folks with a little bit of budget and a little bit of time got to them, it's remained this very authentic form of communication. So as you can see with both of these, they're very rough. They don't speak in complete sentences. They have emojis on them. They're very informal. They're very quick. They're not super high quality images or photos or even videos when taking them. And really the expectation is in this vertical format that they're created on the phone for people to consume on the phone, and that they live for 24 hours and go away. So there's no lacquer or polish needed to really create something that's permanent. You always can save them if they're good and there's something that show off that you can save to your profile page. But it's something where you should really lean into the authenticity, even more so than on your feed, to be able to really, if you've got the time and energy to have photography that's really compositional and thoughtful on your feed itself, because it is going to be there forever at your front door, unless you delete it. This stuff can really be something that can be spur of the moment and done in a way that doesn't require any layer of polish at all. In fact, it's usually consumed better when it doesn't, and can often be very behind the scenes and very frank and upfront, because these are people that already know who you are and know what you do and know what you do well, and really want to see behind the curtain to get you to know your folks and your team and your restaurant as people, as individuals, as community members, as neighbors, and as people that they want to be connected with on social media.
Definitely. Personally, as a viewer, I love stories. That's probably what I spend the most time looking at. And we actually will get into a little bit about the analytics of what people are looking at on Instagram. But those were all very good points, Alex. So as I mentioned, we were going to talk a little bit about making sure you remain on brand and being relevant. So if your restaurant was a person, who would that be? That really is what your brand is. So in continuing with the Joe's beef, how does he dress? What activities does Joe like? What is he passionate about? I kind of picture him, if I was doing social media for Joe's beef, I'm picturing this guy. He likes to drink beer. He likes to watch football. He's a Bears fan. I'm going to keep that in mind when I'm making any of my posts. That way I'm relatable. I've humanized my brand. So when I'm posting things, they're relatable, they're transparent, they're really focusing on building that relationship. So who's watching the Bears game today? It would be great to have a Joe's Beef with, while we're watching them hopefully win. It also allows you to kind of show gratitude on a more personal level, thanking your guests much as you would thank your guests if they were coming to your home. And it allows you to stay true to yourself and to your voice. So when you're posting all of these things, having an idea of who your brand and your person is really helps. I sometimes would run social media accounts for several brands at once. And this really helped me, again, kind of being able to put on a different hat. The Joe's Beef is very different than the Joe Seafood, right? He might refer to oysters and champagne, where Joe's Beef is, referring to beer and football. So it helped me at least get in the mindset of how the tone of voice for a lot of these posts. And I think that's kind of a little tip and trick that I would pass on. Another thing that you can kind of, if you're looking for things to post about, there are those national food and maker related holidays. So again, a Joe's Beef is definitely gonna post on National Hot Dog Day. Whereas he might not necessarily post on National Oyster Day. But there is something for everyone. Every day is something. So if you're looking to fill things in, there's calendars that you can find that list throughout the whole year. Use some of those, use what the world is talking about, what your community is talking about, good things. And then also kind of a side note about when bad things are happening in the world. A lot of times, especially nowadays, people go directly to social media. I would just say, don't be tone deaf. If you have something scheduled to talk about Taco Tuesday and there is a natural disaster, take that post down. Probably not the best time to be getting people to come in to talk about tacos. If you feel so inclined, you can certainly post something about the natural disasters. Depending on how serious it is, you could not capitalize on it. But Alex, I think it was your example where when there was a government shutdown, you guys used the tagline like "less politics, more hoagies." Is that
Yeah.
so?
Yeah.
That's a fun example. That's fine. That was something that was topical and going on and kind of making the best of a bad situation when the government is shut down. So there's opportunities to do that. And there's also opportunities to listen to your community and not necessarily post if it's not the right time.
Yeah, and to that, I would always advocate, if you're unsure how folks are going to react to something, then think twice about posting it. There are plenty of restaurants and bars that take very strong political stances and advertise them on social media. I'm a pretty firm advocate against that. Not that I think that there's not a space in place for those kinds of conversations, but a business Instagram may not be where it is. Everyone's compelled to post what they think and they feel is right, and that is always okay. But just do know that there are sometimes consequences and groups of folks that will tune you out if they're not aligned with what you're thinking, and that can occur on lots of political issues. So I always advocate for people to be careful and be thoughtful and just really think twice about how lots of different folks are going to react to what they're seeing, and make sure you're not alienating anyone that you certainly want to maintain as a customer. If you wouldn't say it to their face, it's not a good idea to say it on social media, is usually a good rule of thumb.
Yeah, and definitely, and just going back to being authentic. So if you say that you donate to a charity, you should definitely be donating to that charity. If you say you practice diversity and inclusion, your staff needs to show that it's practicing diversity and inclusion. Just because nowadays everything is very accessible, and people will uncover that, and they will very much make sure that you are practicing what you preach. So we've created all of this compelling content, and now it's time about how should we post this. Timing and frequency are almost as important as what you're actually posting. Not quite, but pretty important. So we recommend you post at least 2 to 3 times a week, and never go more than a week without posting at all. That's going to keep that engagement alive. It also plays in a little bit to that IG algorithm that I talked about, that if you go too long between posts, it's not going to be pushed up into people's front of mind. And then again, as we've mentioned several times, tone, style, and aesthetic should always be consistent too. So consistency is key in all factors here. And then a cadence. So you can schedule ahead, and that's what actually we're going to talk about in our next section. But anytime you get into a groove, get into a routine, just like anything else, once this becomes more second nature to you, this will be an easier part of your business to operate than you may even think. And then once you do get into that groove, you'll be able to extract insights from your data, which will be helpful in making future decisions. And then, as mentioned, even if you have all of this planned, some things cannot be predicted or scheduled. So still have that level of flexibility in you. Post some real-time things, especially in the stories. If something funny happens or something unexpected, post it on your stories and show that you still are a human and not a robot.
Yeah, and from an operating perspective, it's similar to, an analog in the restaurant. When you're doing restaurant inventory, you don't take that inventory each and every time you use an item. You do it on a regular basis, so it becomes something that you can do consistently. When you're ordering food from your vendors, you don't order as soon as you run out of the last thing and order one at a time. You really plan ahead and create order days and order times so you can really be more efficient with your time. And we really advocate for doing that with your marketing too. And whether it's once a month that you sit down and you create focus for yourself and anyone else that you're inviting in to help you with your social media content, and think about what your monthly cadence and calendar is going to be. What kinds of content do you already have? What might you need? What have other people been posting about you? Really be judicious with using your time to plan, focus, and really think about how you can maximize your time to then, as Gina mentioned previously, maybe take 10, 12 pictures of similar things all at once, so that you have all of your posts then lined up for the rest of the month. There's always space for new things and innovation, and when things change in the world to pivot and modulate, but you can then have at least something in the back burner to make sure that you're prepared to be able to keep up with the cadence that's going to make sense most with your guests, and not have it be something that each and every day you're waking up and dreading, crap, I haven't posted in a while, I need to think of something. But you can really be more thoughtful about it and start to spur ideas that lead to more ideas in a space that you've carved out for yourself on a regular basis, once a month, once a week, once a quarter, even once a year, when you can think about what you're doing each month broadly, thematically, which is something that we do a lot with our clients, and thinking about quarterly and yearly marketing calendars and schedules, what events occur and what times, and broad strokes of what themes we're going to try to hit, what launches we're doing, what openings we're doing, things like that. But you can apply that to your own restaurant, your own Instagram, and your own social media communications to make sure that everything you're doing is somewhat planned out, but it allows space for innovation and stories, and in a couple of posts that are more time relevant.
That is actually the perfect segue into our activity. So I wanted to give you a little bit of a glimpse into how I would lay out marketing calendars for my clients. One of the places I did this for was Chicago, one of Chicago's oldest restaurants. We were a German restaurant. We made our own brats. We cured our own corned beef. We made our own beer, and we also had our own bourbon barrel with 4 roses. So I mention all of those things up front because those are all interesting pieces and part of our story. And every restaurant has a story. How you came about, how long you've been in business, why you got into business, who got you started cooking. If you look at the story of your restaurant, it's really not as overwhelming. One, it provides you a lot of content. 2, looking at your marketing calendar holistically will not feel as overwhelming anymore. So what I would do at the beginning of every year in January was I actually looked at a calendar for the whole year, and I laid things out that I knew had to be posted, either a frequency amount or a timing amount. We threw a 3-day long festival at the end of September every year, Oktoberfest. That was, of course, a big spike in sales, but also that was our biggest publicity getter of the year. We would get on the news, we would have a lot of media mentions. So I wanted to make sure that I was leading up the entire year to that festival. But also we had a lot of sponsors for that event. So I wanted, in some of their packages, they got social media mentions on to our audience. So I needed to make sure that those important things were on there. So like I said, I would take a calendar, like much like this picture, for every month of the year, and I would lay out things that had to be in there at certain times. And then as we got closer to our Oktoberfest, starting a countdown, or starting a spot the brat, as I mentioned before. So we had a mascot that was a huge sausage running around the city of Chicago. And so I didn't want something like that to sneak up on me, because we were preparing it for it throughout so much of the year, and there was so much operational things behind that festival. Getting the social media things nailed down beforehand was very helpful to help me not forget anything. So I looked at the year as a whole, as I mentioned, quarterly, what do we always want to be mentioning? We had different seasonal beers. So we knew when those things were going to be tapped that I could put right into the calendar. And then I would go in about 2 months before. So right now it's the end of August. At the end of August, I would be looking at October, and I would be filling in everything else around it. So we have those things that have already been in there. And maybe we are running a special now that we decided on. Like I mentioned, the 2 for Tuesdays. So then I'm going to add that in on every Tuesday, put that in as my posts. And then maybe we are going to do on Wednesdays an employee spotlight, as I've mentioned. Things I would definitely give things an opportunity to catch on. So I would normally run something like an employee spotlight for, say, 6 to 8 weeks, and see how it's doing before I would totally give up on it. You got to do things more than once or twice, especially these weekly cadence things, because you just don't know when they're going to hit. Like much of marketing. So I would put that in there. And then I would probably revisit it again after that 8th week post and say, did people engage? Were people happy to see these employee spotlights? Should we continue this? Should we not? It also gave me time to talk to those employees and say, hey, fill out this form, and we're gonna, we're gonna highlight you on this date, and then they can share with their friends and be excited about that. So also at the end of August, I would be looking at September. So theoretically, I had already filled out September, but then I was looking into more of the minute details. Maybe we are in Chicago, you never know the weather. So maybe it's like all of a sudden very cold in September. And so I couldn't have known that when I scheduled that 2 months ago, but I can talk about it now. I can add something in, like next week it's supposed to rain. We're closing our outdoor seating patio early for the year this year, whatever it might be, that's a lot more topical, that you now know about a couple weeks out. And of course, there's always those, like I've been mentioning, those evergreen things. If I just realize that it's National, Beer Day, I'm definitely gonna put that in there. Just double checking. I should have known it was National Beer Day, at the beginning of the year, but if I missed something, just kind of always checking and make sure that for the next 2 months, we have at least 2 or 3 posts for a week, if not more, because then I can use my time looking at analytics and looking at what's working, and not always creating content. So I tried to create a lot of it up front in our slower months. We were pretty slow in January and February, like most restaurants. So I would do a lot of my social media planning then, and even taking some of the pictures of the recipes and things like that, where I could, talk to the chef more often, more easily, until we really got into the groove of things in the summer, and then into the fall and in Oktoberfest. Alex, did you guys, I know you said you didn't do a lot of the marketing, but is that similar to how you approached things?
Yeah, I mean, zooming out a little bit, we were a scratch made, chef driven sandwich concept. We had multiple units, so we had a little bit of scale. So we did have a bit more personnel above store than maybe some folks have. But we were still a very small business moving 1,000,000 miles an hour. And so, we really defined ourselves by, one, seasonal menu launches. So we had 4 times a year where we were doing a very meaningful menu update. So we would plant a flag around that for the annual planning purposes. And we would know, a year, basically for the whole year, when is that happening? We would then post forward and backwards on those things. So we're then marking our calendars for 2 weeks out. We're going to preview the final development process with a post or two. 1 week out, we're going to sort of drum up interest and try and create excitement, the day of, of. Obviously, we're going to have a big post on the seasonal menu launch, and then for the couple of weeks following, we're going to be kind of recapping all of those new menu items that are now available and compelling people to come in. So that was actually 4 times a year times 4 weeks. We're actually talking about almost half the years of posts, just really focused on what the core of our restaurant was, which was a seasonally driven scratch-made concept. The other portion that we would do is we would do regular chef collaborations in between those seasonal launches. So whatever month that we're not doing a seasonal menu launch, which at this point was only 8 of the 12 months out of the year that we didn't have sort of solved for in broad thematic strokes, we would then identify another partner, another restaurant industry member, another restaurant or chef or area chef, or even someone from out of town sometimes, to do a collaboration with us to develop a single menu item and then focus on their story, cross pollinating with their social media and all of that. So all to say, by the time we sat down and planned just two initiatives for our restaurant, which yes, did occupy a lot of our time to think about and execute and pull through, but it was what we were doing as operators anyway. We then had a marketing plan that candidly was about 50 to 60% of our social media posts for the year, just planned in one day, knowing what our activities were going to be, and the rest we filled in as we regrouped every month to think about, what's happening in current events, what's happening in our stores, who can we highlight, what kind of things can we be a little more nimble on, and think about posting to supplement and indeed evergreen content, and not losing focus on the things that weren't changing, that were core to our brand, and making sure those were focused on as well. But through just planning and thinking about the things that were core to our business and core to who we were, we were able to really kind of take a crack at, if we were posting every day, but we had quite a few more units to be posting about and a pretty decent following. But if we were just posting 2 to 3 times per week, we would have had 75% of our posts already created just by what we were already doing, and making sure we're documenting it with interesting photography and creating captions and dialogue around it. So couldn't agree more. And it's really a great way to take what you're already doing as a business, all the initiatives you're already taking, whether you're opening a new location, launching a new item, creating a new menu, doing new branded collateral, developing out new recipes, developing out new things for people to purchase and buy, thinking about all of the things that are changing in your restaurant over the course of the year, to then document those months, build a strategy around promoting them over social media. And you'd be surprised how quickly the calendar fills up when done ahead of time, versus how behind you feel in marketing the things that you're doing, or not getting traction on things you're doing already. So it's really a great way to amplify what already works, rather than try and create more work for yourself to celebrate something once you've already done it.
Exactly. And we've mentioned a lot about obviously scheduling all these things. Hootsuite is a great platform to use for that. You can go in and lay out on a calendar, but there are several. And in our toolkit, we link to a lot of those resources. In case you're wondering, like, okay, I have all these ideas now, where do I actually schedule them? I always use Hootsuite. So now you've scheduled all of this and your content's built and your content's ready. So what are you going to do with all of this? This is where the insights and analytics come in. And it's another reason why we really enjoy Instagram. They provide a lot of data in a very easy output. The main thing you need to know is your business, your account needs to be a business account. That's very easy to do. If you are not already, you go to your settings, and then your account settings, and then you switch it over to a business account. And automatically, as soon as you press that button, Instagram will start collecting this data for you. Some of it backtracks. You can get some activity as far as profile views, website clicks, emails, and calls for the last couple weeks. And then moving forward, as long as you're a business, you can even go back a couple of years on some of your feeds and posts. So backing it up a little bit, as I mentioned, you can see your profile visits, how many people are either visiting your website, emailing you, or calling you from Instagram. Your reach, which is individual unique visitors who have seen you, versus your impressions. So that's how many people viewed it. So if I watched something 3 times, for reach, I'm only going to count as 1, but for impressions, I'm going to count as 3 because I watched it 3 times. And that's really going to start to see, what are people watching? Are they watching your, TikTok style videos where you're making a recipe? Are they passing something? You can also see from stories if people click to the next story or click out of it. So if you're like, hey, no one's paying attention when we're talking about, whatever it might be, then stop posting that type of content. Um, this also helps with, like I said, scheduling. So you start to kind of get an idea of what people want to see and you can add more of those. And then Instagram in general has some interesting facts that I always like to share. So I laugh at this one, but most people are using Instagram on Tuesdays through Fridays between 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. So really when they're supposed to be working is when they're on Instagram. So if you know that, you can proactively schedule some things for those times, knowing that that's when just the bulk of the people in the world are on Instagram. But do tailor it to your business. Do be flexible. I actually did some work for a sleep consultant, and naturally, people were Googling her and on her when they were desperate for sleep at 2 and 3 in the morning. So for her, I actually would schedule some things for in the wee hours of the night, since she was an outlier of when people are typically on Instagram. But I think it's interesting for restaurants because that is depending on your business, more of our downtime. So you can actually be a little bit, interactive during those Tuesdays through Fridays, 10 to 3, when everyone else is on Instagram. As I mentioned, you do need to be a business account for these things. And like I said, it's very easy to do so. And once you do that, you can look at specific date ranges and compare week to week, month to month. You can look more about who has just looked at your items versus who is actually liking and talking, who is preferring your individual posts versus your reels versus your stories. So once you understand your audience, it leads to a much easier decision making. So even though you had set everything perhaps, a year in advance or even a couple months in advance, I very much encourage you to use the insights to your advantage and go in and change things that you have scheduled if you need to. If like I said, if something's just not really inspiring very much engagement, then try something else. That's the beauty of social media. It's a very low barrier to entry. There's not a lot of money that you have to put behind it. You don't have to do any ads, anything. I will say, when you sign up for a business account on Instagram, it's very easy to, if you do want to promote some of your posts, to do that. It's just a button to click, and then they'll get into how much you want to spend on that. But it makes it very easy. You can do it all from your phone. Very like user intuitive. I actually turned my personal account into a business account, just to kind of see how things have changed, because Instagram is continuously evolving what they offer, to continuously keep it easy and quick moving, and really just something you can do on the fly from your phone, to check to make sure that you are being as efficient as possible with what you're posting.
Again, putting the operator hat on, and we only have 1 minute left, but just think of this as your restaurant PMix and taking a look at what's selling or what's working or what's selling on social media the same way, and doing more of that and doing less of things that aren't, or adjusting the things that aren't to make sure that they start selling more, or that they serve a different reason, that they make your they make your feed rounded out, or they do something for you visually, or create interest, or celebrate something that you think is worth celebrating, even if it's not as engaging as other posts can be. And just because it's popular doesn't mean it's good, but it does serve a purpose.
And then, like anything else, I would just say set goals, be specific, make them measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound. This is especially important if you have someone else running your social media. That way they can, tell you if they met your monthly goals. Most businesses grow about 2% in followers per month. So if you want to use that as a baseline for some of your goals that you might want to set, and you can break that down into further segments. It shows you male versus female followers. It shows you where they're located, what cities, what countries. So you can break it down when you're setting your own goals. And then it really helps you just kind of keep a pulse on what all of this effort, if it's working or not. And of course, hopefully, ultimately, it boosts sales as well as brand reputation and awareness. So thank you so much. At the end of this, we have just a little, recap. So select your 1 to 2 social media platforms, create business profiles on those so that eventually you can get the data, strategize and pre-plan and schedule those posts of compelling content that is authentic to your business and your brand voice. Be consistent and actively engage. And when you do those things, everything will fall into place. Like we said, if you have any questions, we have all of our information in the toolkit, and you can certainly contact us then. And the toolkit will actually expand on a lot of this for you.
Great. Thanks everybody for joining. And we look forward to seeing you on the next one when we walk through this toolkit in a bit more detail, how to use it and how to access all those great resources that are found within it with this and so much more. So appreciate everybody's time. Thank you.
Thank you.